Piers Plowman by William Langland. Passus 3. Now, Mead the maid, alone among them all, is brought before the king by beadles and bailiffs. The king called a clerk, I can't recall his name, to take Mead the maid and make her at home. I will sound her out myself, and ask straightforwardly what man of this world she would prefer, and if she works with wit and follows my will, I will forgive her guilt, so God help me. Courteously the clerk then, as king commanded, with his arm around her waist led her away to a chamber. But there was mirth and minstrelsy, that Mead might be pleased. Those who work at Westminster worship her all. Gently with joy the justices together bustle to the bedroom where the bride dwells, comforted her kindly with clergy's permission, and said, Don't mourn, Mead, or make any sorrow, for we'll take care of the king and clear your way to be wedded as you will, whatever you please, for all conscience's calculations and craftiness, I'm sure. Mildly Mead then made her thanks to them all for their great goodness, and gave them each one cups of clean gold, and copes soon with silver, rings with rubies, and riches aplenty, the lowest lad of the household a lamb of gold. Then they took their leave, these lords, of Lady Mead. With that came clerks to comfort her also, and bade her to blithe. For we'll be your men, and work your will while your life lasts. She replied to this promise pleasantly, saying to them that she would love them loyally, and make lords of them. In the consistory at court call out their names. No stupidity shall stop him, the scholar I love, from being first advanced, for I am recognized where clever clerks like cripples bring up the rear. Then there came a confessor, coped as a friar, to Mead the maid meekly he bowed, and said very softly, in shrift as it were, Though learned men and unlearned had both lain with you, and though falsehood had followed you all these 15 winters, I shall absolve you myself for a seam of wheat, and also be your go-between, and bear your message well to ecclesiastes and knights at court, to chop conscience down. Then Mead knelt to that man for the misdeeds she'd done, and shrove herself of her sins, shameless, I think, told him a tale, and tipped him a noble, to be her beadsman and go-between as well. Then he absolved her swiftly, and said thereafter, We've a window being worked on that will cost us a lot. If you'd glaze that gable and engrave your name there, your soul should be certain to have in heaven. If I were sure of that, said the woman, I would spare nothing to be your friend, friar, and fail you never, as long as you love lords that practice lechery, and don't malign ladies that love it well too. It's a frailty of the flesh, if you find it in books, and a natural enough urge, innate in our kind. If you can escape the scandal, the scar is soon healed. It's the sin of the 7 soonest remitted. Have mercy, said Mead, on men that practice it. and I'll find funds for your church roof, provide you with a cloister, have your walls whitewashed and your windows glazed, and have painted and portrayed who paid for work, so that every soul shall see I'm a sister of your house. But God forbids such engraving to all good people, inscribing in stained glass the story of their beneficence, lest pride be portrayed there, and pomp of this world. For God can see your conscience, and the kindness of your will, and the cost to you, and your covetousness, and whom the capital belonged to. Therefore, learn from me, you lords, to leave off such writing, inscriptions on stained glass of the story of your gifts, or to go calling for God's men when you give alms, for fear you have your hire here, and your heaven as well. Let not the left hand know what the right hand is doing. Let not your left hand, late or early, be aware of what you do with your right hand. For thus God in the gospel bids good men give their alms. Mayors and mace-bearers that are intermediaries between the king and the commons in keeping the laws, who should punish on pillories and pining stools, brewers and bakers, butchers and cooks, for these are the ones in the world who work most harm to the poor people that purchase small portions, because they poison the people privily, and often they get rich through their retail sales and buy rental property with what the poor people should be putting in their bellies. For if their earnings were honest, their houses were less high, and they'd buy no borough freeholds, you can be sure of that. But Mead the maid has made a plea to the mayor to accept silver from all such sellers, or presents of unminted metal, such as medals of silver, rings, or other riches on behalf of retailers. For my love, said that lady, love them each one, and suffer them to sell at prices somewhat unreasonable. Solomon the sage had something to say to amend mayors and men that administer the laws, and took this at his text that I intend to repeat. Fire shall consume the tabernacles of those who willingly accept bribes, etc. Among these lettered lords, this Latin signifies that fire shall fall on and conflagration consume the house and home of any who desires presents to be proffered him as prerequisites of his office. The king came from council and called for mead, and sent for her straightway. Sergeants fetched her and brought her to his bower with bliss and with joy. Courteously the king commenced to speak. To Mead the maid in this manner he spoke. Unwisely, woman, you have worked often, but worse work you never did than when you took false. But I forgive you that guilt, and grant you my grace from now to your death day. Do so no more. I have a knight called Conscience, has come lately from abroad. If he wants you for his wife, will you have him? Yes, lord, said that lady. Lord forbid else, if I'm not wholly at your behest. Have me hanged. Then Conscience was called to come and appear before the king and his council, clerks, and others. Kneeling to the king, Conscience questioned him humbly what his will was and what he should do. "Will you have this woman, if I will assent? For she craves your company to become your mate." Said Conscience to the king, "Christ forbid it! Before I wed such a wife, woe betide me! She is frail and unfaithful, fickle of her speech. She makes men misbehave many score times. In trust of her treasure she troubles a great many. Wives and widows she teaches wantonness, gives them lessons in lechery who love her gifts. She felled your father through false promises, poisoned popes, impaired holy church. There's not a better go-between by him that made me between heaven and hell, though one searched the whole world. Her tail is ticklish, her tongue is too ready. She's as common as the cartway to comers and goers, to monks, to messengers, to leper men in hedges. Assizers and summoners, such men prize her. Sheriffs of shires would be ashamed but for her. She makes men lose their lives and their land both. She permits prisoners to go free, pays for their release, and gives the jailers gold and groats together to unfetter the false, to flee where he likes. She takes the true man by the top and ties him up fast, and hangs him out of hatred who has harmed no one. To be excommunicated in the consistory she doesn't care a bean, because she gives copes to the commissary and coats to his clerks. She is absolved as soon as she herself pleases. She may almost as much do in a month only as your secret seal in 60 days. She's privileged with the Pope. Provisors know it. She and Sir Simony put the seals on the bulls. She blesses bishops. She knows to be ignorant. Prebendaries, parsons, and priests she supports to maintain mistresses and concubines all their mortal days, and to bring forth bastards forbidden by law. Where she stands well with the king, woe to the realm. For she is favorable to false and befouls truth often. By Jesus, with her jewels she corrupts your justices and tells lies against the law, and lays down obstacles, so that faith may not go freely forth. Her florins reign so thick. She leads the law as she likes, and arranges love days, and makes men loose for love of her, so that lawyers may profit. A maze for a poor person, though he pleads forever. Law is so lordly and loath to make an end. Without presents of silver pennies, he pleases very few. Barons and burgesses she brings into sorrow, and all the commons into care that crave to live in truth. Clergy and covetousness she couples together. This is the life of that lady. Now, Lord, give her sorrow, and all that maintain her men, let mischance betide them. For poor men have no power to plead, though they smart. Such a Master Mead is among men of property. Then Mead mourned and lamented to the king, to have a chance to challenge the charges Conscience made. The king granted her grace with a good will. Excuse yourself, if you can. I can say no more, for conscience accuses you to cut you off from the court forever." "No, lord," said that lady. "Believe him the less, until you realize rightly where the wrong lies. Where misery prevails most, Mead may help. And you can be sure, conscience, I didn't come here to quarrel, nor to disparage you personally in the pride of my heart. And you're well aware, conscience, unless you wish to lie, that you've relied on my largesse lots of times, and also grasped my gold and given it where you pleased. It's a wonder to me why you're waxing angry now. I'm still able, as I always was, to honor you with gifts, and to maintain your manhood more than you admit. But you've defamed me foully before the king here, for I never killed any king, or counseled others to, or carried on as you declare. I call the king to witness. In Normandy, in my name he was not injured, but you yourself, for sure, shamed him often, crept into a cabin for cold of your toes, worried that winter would last forever, and dreaded your death from a dark cloud, and hurried homeward for hunger of your belly. Without pity, pillager, you plundered poor men, and bore their brass on your back to Calais to sell, while I stayed longer with my sire to save his life. I made his fighting men merry, and stopped their mourning. I banged them on their backs, and emboldened their hearts, and had them hoping for hope to have me at will. If I'd been marshal of his men, Pine Mary in heaven, I'd have dared lay my life, and no less a pledge. He'd have been lord of that land in length and in breadth, and also king of that country to raise his kin's estate. The least brat of his blood a baron's peer. Cowardly conscience! You counselled him thence to leave his lordship for a little silver, which is the richest realm that the rain falls on. It becomes a king who takes care of a realm to give meed to men who meekly serve him, to aliens, to all men, to honor them with gifts. Meed makes him beloved, and his manhood esteemed. Emperors and earls and all kinds of lords with gifts get young men to gallop on their errands. The Pope and his prelates expect to get presents, and they give meed to men to maintain their laws. Servants for their service, we will well see the truth, take meed from their masters as they may agree. Beggars for the prayers they bid beg men for meed. Minstrels for their mirth demand their meed. The king has meed from his men to make peace in the land. Tutors that teach clerks trust to receive meed. Priests that preach to the people good behavior ask for mead and mass pennies and their meals as well. All kinds of craftsmen crave mead for their apprentices. Mead and merchandise must go together. No life, as I believe, can last without mead. Said the king to conscience, "By Christ, it strikes me Mead has argued so ably. I think she has the upper hand." Kneeling to the king on his knees, "No," said conscience. "Mead must be counted of two kinds, Sir King, by your leave. The first God of his grace grants in his bliss to those who work well while they are here. The prophet preaches of this, and put it in the Psalter. Lord, who shall abide in thy tabernacle? Lord, who shall inhabit your home with your holy saints, or rest on your holy hills? David asks this, and David resolves it himself, as the Psalter tells. He that enters without spot and works justice. Those who enter of one color and of one will, and have done their work with right and with reason, and he who does not lead his life makes loans for usury, but who informs poor people and pursues truth. He that puts not out his money to usury nor takes rewards against the innocent. And all that help the innocent to hold with the righteous, without meed give aid to them and help the truth. Such manner of men, my lord, shall have this first meed from God, as their great need when they go hence. There is a meed immeasurable that men in power desire. To maintain misdoers they accept men's meed, and the Psalter in the Psalms end speaks of them. In whose hands are iniquities, their right hand is full of bribes. And he that grasps their gifts, so God help me, shall bear a bitter cost for them, or the book lies. Priests and parsons who want pampered lives, who take meed for money for masses that they sing, will have reward in this world, as Matthew has granted them. Verily, verily, they have received their reward. What laborers and lowly folk unlearned get from their masters, it is no manner meed, but a measurable hire. There is no meed in merchandise, I may well assert it. It is a plain permutation, one pennyworth for another. But have you never read Regum, you wretched meed? Why, that vengeance fell on Saul and on his children. God sent to Saul by Samuel the prophet to say that Agag and Amalek and all his people as well should die for a deed done by their forebears. Therefore, said Samuel to Saul, God himself commands you to be obedient to his bidding and fulfill his will. Go to Amalek with your host, and whatever you find there, slay it. Both men and beasts, burn them to death. Widows and wives, women and children, furniture and farmsteads. Whatever you find there, burn it. Don't bear it away, be it never so rich. Despite meed or money, make sure you demolish it. Destroy it and spare it not. You will speed the better. But because he coveted their cattle and spared the king, forbore him and his beasts both, as the Bible witnesses, otherwise than he was warned by the prophet, God said to Samuel that Saul must die, and all his seed for that sin shamefully end. Such a mischance meed made the king have that God hated him always, and all his heirs as well. The culorum of this case I don't care to show, lest I should have harm from it. I will make no end. For so wags the world with those who wield power, that whoever furnishes them with facts is the first to be blamed. Because kind wit taught me, I, conscience, know this, that reason shall reign and rule all realms, and just as Agag shall happen to some, Samuel shall slay him, and Saul shall be blamed, and David shall be diademed and dominate them all, and one Christian king care for each one of us. Mead shall no more be master on earth, but love and lowliness and lute together. These shall be governors on this ground to guard true men, and whoever trespasses against truth, or takes things against his will, no living man but lute shall apply the law to him. For such service shall no sergeant wear a silk scarf, nor face his cap with a fur for defending clients. Mead of misdoers makes many lords, over lords' laws she leads the realm. But kind love shall come yet, and conscience with him, and make a laborer of law. Such love shall arise, and such a peace among the people, and a perfect trust, that Jews shall judge in their wit, and be joyful at heart, that Moses or Messiah has come to Middle Earth, and have marvel in their minds that men are so true. All that arm themselves with broadsword, with spear or dagger, axe or hatchet, or any other weapon, shall be doomed to death, unless they reduce it to sickle or scythe, to plowshare or to cutler. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, etc. Each man shall play with a plow, pickaxe or spade, spin or spread dung, or spoil himself in sloth. Priests and parsons with placebo shall hunt and dig upon David each day till evening. On hunting or on hawking, if any of them go, the living he delights in he shall lose straightway. Shall neither king nor knight, constable nor mayor, lay such care upon the commons as to make them come to court, and put them in a panel, that have them plight their oaths. But by the facts evinced the evidence one verdict shall award, mercy or no mercy, as truth may agree. King's court and common court, consistory and chapter, all will be but one court, and one man be justice. That will be true tongue, a tidy man who never troubled me. There shall be no battles, and no man bear weapon, and the smith that smithies any shall be smitten to death with it. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, etc. And before this fortune befalls men, shall find the worst by 6 sons, and a ship, and half a sheaf of arrows, and the middle of a moon shall make the Jews convert. And for that sight Saracens shall sing Gloria in excelsis. For to Mahomet and Mead mishap shall come that time. For better is a good name than great riches. Mead, at that moment, grew as mad as the wind. "I know no Latin," said she. "Clerks know the truth. See what Solomon says in his Sapiens book. They that give gifts, take heed, are granted the victory, and much worship as well, as holy words tell. He will acquire honor who gives gifts, etc. I can well believe, lady, said Conscience, that your Latin is good. But you are like a lady that read a lesson once. It was omnia probate, and that pleased her heart, since the line was no longer at the leaf's end. If she'd looked over leaf, on the left-hand side, she would have found fell words following thereafter. Quod bonum est tenente, a text that truth made. And that was your mistake, madam. You could find no more written when you searched Sapience, sitting in your study. The text you would have told us would be true for lords, but you lacked a clever clerk that could have turned the page. And if you search Sapience again, you shall find what follows, a most troublesome text to those that take mead. But he steals the spirit of those who accept. And that is the tale of the text you tried to quote, that though we win worship, and with mead have the victory, the soul that accepts the gift by so much is enslaved.